Manitowoc County was supposed to step back. Conflict of interest, remember? But when Calumet officially takes over, who's still searching? Steven Avery's trailer. Manitowoc deputies, front and center. And the Calumet sergeant with them? He calls their first pass a quick search. 3 hours inside Steven Avery's trailer. Quick. So, what really happened in that trailer, and who was actually running this investigation? Welcome back to Beach House 34. I'm your host, Christine Worth. Before we begin today, just a reminder, there's a lot of exhibits that are shown in these episodes, and this one in particular. These, at least in my opinion, are important. The way that they're described by the prosecution and the witness don't often match up to what's in the pictures. If you want to actually see the images, you can go to my YouTube channel at Beach House 34 to watch and listen to this exact episode if you want to see those exhibits, and I'll have the link for you in the show notes. Last episode, we heard from Deputy Siders, the Manitowoc officer who discovered the infamous burn barrel. He described ashes, melted plastic, and what he believed were pieces of a Motorola cell phone. But remember this, what he claimed to see with his own eyes wasn't actually visible in the photographs. That's a problem. We also started testimony from Sergeant William Tyson of Calumet County. This is the man who officially relieved Manitowoc of scene security. He emphasized that a crime scene log was being kept, and something that's already been a point of contention in this trial. And despite Manitowoc supposedly stepping back, Tyson was paired with Manitowoc deputies as they searched Steven Avery's trailer, which begs the question, was Manitowoc really out of this investigation? Or were they just working through the back door? Today, we're going to pick up right where we left off with Sergeant Tyson's direct testimony. He's going to walk us through that first so-called quick search of Steven Avery's home, evidently room by room, what his role was supposed to be, and why this definition of a quick search might make you raise an eyebrow. Everyone was given a very short break because there's still quite a bit of testimony to be done by Sergeant Tyson, and we are still under the direct examination, and the questioning is being done by Attorney Kratz. And as soon as everyone's back, they are seated, he begins. Sergeant Tyson, you mentioned that you had gone into the Avery trailer to commence a search of that property. Did all 4 team members enter the residence at the same time? Yes. Now, you mentioned that you were in charge of both documentation as well as seizure or collection of property. Is that a fair representation? Yes. After it was collected, it would be turned over to me for transport back to our facility. Before an item was recovered, were you called to the location where it may have been found? Yes. For example, when they were searching the bedroom, if Sergeant Colburn located something, he would immediately draw my attention. I'm standing right there. So I could see what they were doing. If he found something, I could see that he found it. And I would document the exact time that he found it and then it was seized. What was the first room that you searched? After the photography of the inside of the residence was complete, the decision was made to start in the south bedroom, and that was later identified as Steven Avery's bedroom. You mentioned after the photography was complete. It sounds like something first happened before the search. Is that right? Yeah. Upon entry into the residence, Sergeant Colburn had a 35mm camera, and Detective Remacher had a digital camera. And once we got in there, they just began photographing each of the rooms, and every room inside the trailer was photographed. After that was finished, then the decision was made to start the search in Steven's bedroom. Did you accompany them through that search? Yes. Did you enter the bedroom as well? Yes. Could you describe this bedroom for us, please? Sure. You walk in through the doorway. Immediately to the right, there was a nightstand and then the bed. Straight ahead of that, to the left, there was a small bookcase, a desk. There was windows on the back wall. You go along the bed, there was a dresser in the corner, and the closets were up against the opposite wall from where the door was. How large was this bedroom? A rather small bedroom, actually. 4 grown men were in this room. Is that right? Yes. Describe that for the jury, if you can. Well, as we walked in, Detective Remacher and Lieutenant Link, they said, well, because it was a small confined area, we're going to start over on the side where the closet sat. We will start going through that stuff. Sergeant Colburn concentrated his search on the bookshelf and the desk on the opposite side of the room. So the bed was in the middle, 2 on that side, 2 on this side. I'm standing directly inside the doorway watching what they were doing. Were they in constant view of you? Yes. All right. Let's talk about some of the things that were observed in the in the bedroom. First exhibit I'm going to ask you to take a look at is exhibit number 163. Can you tell us what that is, please? The very first picture here? Yes. Okay. This would be a view of Steven Avery's bed. Go ahead. This is a view of Steven Avery's bed and the nightstand directly next to the bed. Attorney Kratz then says, and just so the record is clear, unless something unusual occurs or is alerted, Your Honor, by counsel, so that this witness doesn't have to talk about evidence twice, Mr. Strang has been kind enough to allow the item to be projected at the same time as the witness testifies about it. So I appreciate that very much. The court says, all right, is that correct, Mr. Strang? Attorney Strang says, yes, it's actually Mr. Buting. And the court says, Mr. Buting. Attorney Buting says, that's correct. Attorney Kratz says, oh, I'm sorry. And then Attorney Kratz continues. Sergeant Tyson, the bed in Steven Avery's bedroom, the exhibit that is 163, looks like it has some bedding on it. Is that correct? Yes. And there seems to be something above the bed. Can you tell what that is? And this is Christine, just for the record, this is actually verbatim from the transcript. So if anything sounds weird as I'm talking about it, I am literally reading it as it is written. For those who are just listening and not watching on YouTube, these pictures are not great by any stretch of the imagination. It's hard to tell the view of the room because so many of the photos are super close up. This one in particular has a picture of Steven's bed, which is color coordinated. It's all in blue and appears to have been made. It's all made up. His headboard shows dust on top of it. The sides of the headboard have these decorative posts that have round balls on the top of those, which also appear to be a bit dusty. Now, I'm not going to describe every picture, but it sure looks to me like a very undisturbed bedroom. Let's continue. Directly above the bed was a gun rack, and it did house 2 long-barreled firearms inside the mounting brackets. Can you describe those firearms for us, please? They were long guns. They weren't handguns. They were long guns. I didn't walk up and remove them or physically check them out or anything, but I could see that they were firearms up on the wall. All right. Did you later come to have either a closer inspection or to become familiar with those guns? I never personally looked at the firearms after they were collected. They weren't collected that evening with the officers that I was with. There was a different officer, I believe, that collected those firearms. What were the guns on? The gun rack. They were hanging on the wall. And exhibit number 166, which is actually a little bit of a gap. If you would set 164 and 5 to the side, I would appreciate it. 166 is being projected. Can you tell us what that is, please? That was the gun rack that was hanging directly above the bed. Also, going to have Investigator Wiegert help me through this process since there's a lot of evidence to show the jury. Investigator Wiegert is going to hand you what's been marked for identification as Exhibit 196. Can you show that and tell the jury what that is, please? This is the gun rack that was mounted on the wall directly above the headboard of Steven's bed. And again, was that the rack in which those two long guns were located? Yes. And the last photo I want you to look at is Exhibit 167. It's in front of you, and now the jury can see that. Can you tell us what 167 is? Looks like it's the same gun rack that's in front of me right now. Just an evidence photo that is taken here at the sheriff's department? Yes. Attorney Kratz then says, set that over there. Thank you, investigator. And then he continues. In this bedroom, did you notice other pieces of furniture? There was the bookcase, there was the desk, there was a dresser. Okay, let's do these one at a time. First, the bookcase, and I'm going to do this in two different areas of inquiry. As an evidence technician, were you not only responsible to observe items on the 5th of November, but did you later return to Mr. Avery's residence with a search warrant to seize this very item? Yeah, I believe that was December 9th. Christine here. December 9th? Over a month? After they did the search, they had the place for like a week. Let's continue. The first thing I'm going to have you do is look at Exhibit 166, which is on the board. I'm sorry, 168, which is on the wall here. Tell the jury what that is, please. That's the bookcase that was up against the wall as you walked into the bedroom. It was the very first piece of furniture, I believe, on the floor. It was sitting right next to the desk, which was in the corner. You said that was seized at some time? Yes. When was that? That particular piece, I believe, was seized on December 9th. All right. And were you involved in the seizure of it? In other words, did you go to the Avery residence and take possession of this piece of furniture? Yes. CI Agent Fassbender, myself, and there was, I think, 2 more agents from the Department of Criminal Investigations. We did go out there on the 9th and did seize that particular piece of evidence. It takes 4 people to go pick up a bookcase? All right. Well, wait. Let me describe this for you, because you might think, well, this thing is huge. Maybe it took this many guys to go pick it up and move it. No, the image they show is a bookcase that is sitting in if you've ever seen those carts that they use in restaurants, the ones that are maybe waist high and they allow you to push it around so that you can cart a lot of things at once, like dishes or, drinks or whatever. It's sitting on one of those. On the top of it, again, the photo doesn't show the whole thing. It's cut off. The very top of this bookcase is cut off at the top in the picture. But you can see 3 slots on the bottom, which are pretty tall. And then there's this short shelf above it. But what struck out to me was not only the size of this thing, which is, probably as tall as a 2 or 3-year-old person. All of the shelves on this are dusty, and the dust doesn't appear to have been disturbed at all. Let's continue. Now, Sergeant Tyson, there's going to be some testimony, I expect, in the next couple of days about this. But did you have occasion to make observations at Mr. Avery's bedroom of the back panel or the rear of this particular piece of furniture? Attorney Buting says objection as to time of these observations. It's unclear. Attorney Kratz says, I can ask specifically when, Judge. The court says, very well, and Attorney Kratz continues. On the 9th of December, did you have occasion to observe the back panel of this piece of evidence? Yes, we got into the bedroom to seize it. I did photograph it prior to seizing it. I did a side view, front view, and the side view You can see the backing of it was coming out. The nails were protruding from the backing of the cabinet. You said that you took a photo of that. In fact, Exhibit 169, is that a photo of that back panel? It appears to be that, yes. If you take your laser pointer, please, and tell the jury what it is that we're looking at. This here would be the backing to the bookcase. And you can see the distance here where it's pulled away from the back of the bookcase. Christine here. What you don't see when they talk about this picture is that this is a very old, tattered bookcase. Where it's coming off the back looks like it has just, over the years, become detached from the back of the bookcase just because of age, not because of any other, sinister reason. So let's continue. Now, prior to taking this particular photo and prior to making that observation, in fact, did you in any way manipulate this piece of furniture or pull the panel out or anything like that? No, we didn't touch the back of it at all. Didn't even move it. I just started photographing it prior to collecting it. I noticed in the bedroom that there was a nightstand. I'm showing you exhibit number 170. Does that show a picture of the nightstand? Yes, it's right there. And after having been seized, was an evidence photo taken? In other words, at the sheriff's department of that nightstand, exhibit 171. Attorney Buting says objection as to the timing of all this. If he could maybe, if we're going back and forth with those from November to December or later, I think we should identify when these are taken. The court says, I agree. Attorney Kratz then continues. Do you know when this photo was taken, number 171? I don't know the exact date. The person that assisted me with the evidence, his name is Deputy Jeremy Hawkins. He was responsible for all the photography. So I did assist him, but the exact date I would have to refer back to my report. Attorney Kratz then says, I think, Judge, this is the only item that wasn't seized on that day from what I see after that. Let me just see if there's going to be an objection to this one. Attorney Kratz then continues. Sergeant Tyson, do you know when the nightstand, when this piece of furniture was seized? I believe that was after the search warrant on March 1st or 2nd of 2006? Correct. This bedroom of Steven Avery, and then Attorney Buting says, Counsel, could we just, the prior photograph, could we please just get a date as to when that was taken? You showed the nightstand in the room. Attorney Kratz then says, sure. And then he continues. The nightstand in the room, did that look the same or similar as it did on the 5th of November? The prior picture, that would be exhibit number 170. Attorney Buting says, can you put that up? Attorney Kratz says, if I could, I would. There you go. And then Kratz continues. That's exhibit 170. Does that look the same or similar as it did when you first searched it on the 5th of November? Yes, it's in the same location, looks about the same. All right. Okay, Christine here. So in past episodes, Kratz has made a really big deal about being able to hover over photos that were taken at the crime scene or around the crime scene and actually see the date as to when those were taken. However, when this comes up in this testimony, he doesn't offer to do that. He doesn't offer to prove that. And as a matter of fact, it's not really answered, is it? The date is specifically requested, and it's not really answered. It's just kind of glossed over. All right, let's continue. All right, Mr. Avery's bedroom carpeted or have a rug or hardwood floors, or what kind of flooring was that? It was carpeted. I'm going to show you exhibit number 172. Ask you to take a look at the carpeting. Does that look the same or similar as the carpeting did on November 5th? Yes. Sergeant Tyson, exhibit 172. Do you know when that picture was taken? That picture would have had to have been taken after December 9th because the bookcase is not there. So that would have had to have been March 1st. And as far as law enforcement involvement, that was, as far as you were concerned, December 9th. You folks were there. Is that right? Yes. And March 1st. Were you also the individual that was in charge of the evidence collection and technician responsibility inside of Mr. Avery's trailer? Yes. So it's your understanding that this photo, that is 172, was taken on March 1st. I said it would have to be after December 9th. So yeah, next time we were there was, I believe, March 1st. And the question, at least for this photo, is, did the carpet look the same on November 5th and December 9th and March 1st? Yeah, looks to be the same carpeting that was in the room in November of 2005 as it was March of 2006. Oh, Christine here. I'm sorry. Okay. So are you telling me that they go through Steven Avery's trailer for a full week? Evidently, they had it for a full week. They're relatively certain that there's some kind of crime that happened here. There was all that testimony about carpet and somebody attempting to clean up the carpet in another case, right? And that when they pulled up the carpet itself, they could see the padding. There was blood underneath the padding. Again, this is in a totally different case. And yet during that week that they actually had the property and they had the Avery trailer, they never pulled up the carpeting. It was still there even into March of 2006. Is that what I'm understanding? That's crazy. Plus, and I didn't realize this until I saw the exhibits, the carpeting in at least the bedroom is Berber carpeting. And according to the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration certification, Berber carpets are notoriously tricky to clean compared to cut pile carpet. Liquids tend to rise back up to the surface after cleaning, meaning that stains like blood reappear. And according to an introduction to forensic science, which is Pearson 2015, blood evidence often penetrates porous materials like carpet, and it requires removal for collection and analysis. But even if a stain looks like it's gone, chemical regions like luminol will reveal it. FBI and forensic manuals stress that blood in surfaces like carpet, upholstery, mattresses almost always leave detectable traces despite any cleaning. I'm going to add that to my TAL. Today I learned a portion of my brain for today. All right, let's continue. While searching Mr. Avery's bedroom, were there any items of restraint that were found? Yes, Sergeant Colburn located leg shackles and handcuffs. Were those items seized? Yes. Let me first show you what's been marked as exhibit number 204. Tell the jury what that is, please. Appears to be the handcuffs that would have been seized by Sergeant Colburn on November 5th, 2005. Did you see where these items were seized from? If I recall correctly, Sergeant Colburn found them in the bookcase in Stephen's bedroom. All right. You said that there was another item of restraint that was found as well? Yes, leg irons. Let me show you what's been marked for identification as exhibit number 203. Tell the jury what that is, please. That would be the leg irons that were also found by Sergeant Colburn, and I believe they were found in the same location as the handcuffs in this bookcase in his bedroom. All right. Sergeant Tyson, after their seizure, and so that we don't have to bring these items into court, do you know if photographs were taken? That is, evidence photographs were taken of these two items? Yes. I show you exhibit number 173. Ask if you recognize that photograph. It would be an evidence photograph. I know that because of the white paper in the background. All the evidence that we took care of at the sheriff's department, we used freezer paper, and that would be consistent with what I see. Of the handcuffs? Yes. And 174, what is that? That would be the leg irons. Yep, hi, it's me again. As I was reading the transcript, I pictured something big, thick cuffs, heavy, like they, parade people in, when they come from jail and they have to go into court. That's not what these are at all. I was shocked at what they were calling leg irons. They're literally a set of handcuffs with a longer chain. And you might wonder, well, if these were found in his home, why have them? I mean, obviously, the prosecution wants to paint them as something sinister, used for restraint. And if they were found there, again, why would Stephen have them at all? Seriously, it could be so many reasons. I immediately went to something more psychological. He had just spent 18 years in prison for something that he didn't do. Maybe they were his reminder of where he had come from. These items were meant to control him while he was there in prison, but now he's in control. He owns them and he's taking that power back. Maybe it was a reminder of what he survived. We don't know. All that we know is that the prosecution wants you to believe that he did something bad with these. And I'm sure they were DNA tested, right? All right, let's move on. Anything else seized that first evening from Mr. Avery's bedroom as far as you recall? Yes. Well, let me just specifically ask about something called identifiers. This is more of a search term, and please bear with my clumsy question. But are efforts made to identify whether or not a certain person lives in a particular residence when you search it? Yes, when we search residences, you have to show that a person lives in that residence. So we look for any piece of mail that would have the person's name along with their mailing address. Could be a magazine, could be a phone bill, could be any kind of correspondence you get through the mail with your address on it. Investigator Wiegert is going to hand you what's been marked as Exhibit number 200. I need you to tell the jury what Exhibit 200 is, please. It's a University of Wisconsin Law School envelope addressed to Steven Avery at 12390 Avery Road, Two Rivers, Wisconsin. Was that the residence that you were searching on the 5th of November? Yes. Attorney Buting says, I'm sorry, what's the number? Exhibit number? Investigator Wiegert says the exhibit number is 200. Attorney Kratz says, oh, 200? Attorney Buting says, is that just an envelope? And then the witness continues to answer. That would be the correct address for Stephen, 12932 or something like that. So that envelope right there, I think would have the Avery, maybe his mother and father's address on it, but it was found inside the trailer. All right. But it had Stephen's name on it and found inside the trailer? Yes. After searching the bedroom, what was the next room that the four of you searched? The bathroom. Could you tell the jury what, if anything, was found in the bathroom? Sure. There was a possible blood stain on the linoleum floor that Sergeant Colburn had located. Just back up a little bit here because as they were working in Stephen's bedroom, Lieutenant Link and Detective Remacher were finishing up with what they had to do. Sergeant Colburn was finding all the stuff that we have just seen. Lieutenant Link told me he was going to leave the bedroom and go into the bathroom just to see what was in the bathroom. So I repositioned myself in the hallway. I could see Detective Remacher and Sergeant Colburn. I could also see Investigator Link in the bathroom. As the individual documenting what was now a transition from one room to the other, you were in a position to see both. Is that right? Yes. The bathroom. Can you tell us where it is located compared to the bedroom? The very next room. If you were to walk out of the bedroom, go out in the hallway a couple feet, if that, and it's right there. The hallway that you positioned yourself in, would you be able to see both rooms? Yes. Tell me what, if anything, was found in the bathroom. The possible blood spot on the linoleum floor, as I said, was found by Sergeant Colburn. He photographed it, and it was collected with a swab. Collected with a swab. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. As an evidence tech, what does collection of something like a blood spot entail? Because it's dried and it's on the floor, what you do is you can use distilled water and use a sterile swab, which is evidence material that we get. They are sealed. You open them up, take the distilled water, you drop 2 to 3 drops on the cotton applicator at the end of the swab. And then you take that swab and you go into the blood stain itself, and you are able to pick up the blood stain by just dampening the end of the sterile swab. Was that done once or more than once in the trailer? There were several swabs that we took inside the trailer. By the way, Sergeant Tyson, does that process, that is the collection of blood or other fluids, does that take some training or experience on an evidence tech's part? Yes. You have to know certain things. For example, if you have got the distilled water applicator, it cannot touch the cotton swab. You cannot make contact with it. If so, the swab is no good. Your bottle of distilled, throw it in the garbage. It's useless at that point. So you have to have a little bit of training and know exactly what you are doing to avoid possibly tainting the swab. All right? After searching the bathroom, where did you folks go? The bathroom was being searched by Lieutenant Link, and the bedroom was being completed by Sergeant Colburn and Detective Remaker. I had noticed some spots on the door directly behind me, which was an interior/exterior door to go out of the residence. So I drew the attention to Detective Remaker and Sergeant Colburn, Investigator Link, to that area, and they did concentrate their efforts then, photographing the door. And swabs were taken of some of the stains that were on that door as well. What did you do then? After that search was done, the search then continued and they entered the bedroom, which was the only other bedroom in the residence, and that would be located between the living room and the bathroom. That would be called what bedroom did you call that? We referred to it as the spare bedroom. I guess it was used more wasn't being slept in, I guess you could say, more of a storage room, but there was a bed in the room. All right. After that room was searched and processed, what room was next? Then it was the living room. Were there any prominent items of furniture in the living room? You got your couch, and then there was a computer desk in the room. I'm going to direct your attention to exhibit number 175. Can you tell us what that is, please? That's the computer desk area in the living room. Now, there's a lot to look at in exhibit 175. Can you just generally orient us to what we are looking at, please, using the laser pointer? Sure. He's got his television box on top of there, and here you got your computer printer. Speak up a little bit. I'm sorry. You have got the television right here, and then you got your computer monitor printer. Okay, I think the tower was down underneath it on the floor. All right. I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification as exhibit number 198. Show that to the jury and tell them what that is. That's a pocket-sized notebook. Detective Remaker had located this item, was in one of the drawers inside the desk. He had pulled it out, opened it up to the second page, and this is what he saw. This has already been introduced as exhibit 148. Let me just get to that. Tell us what that reads. It's, and then he says a phone number. And that's in what color ink, if you know? Green. And black ink. Is there something else written on there? Right below that in black ink are the words "back to patio door." Did you become aware of whose phone number that was? Yes, Detective Remaker stated he immediately recognized that number to be the cell number for Teresa Hallbach. After he told me that, I said, yeah, that does look familiar. It is. That is the number. And then a photograph of that having been taken at the sheriff's department. That's exhibit number 176, I believe. Can you tell us what that is, please? That's exactly what you saw. That's an evidence photo taken at the sheriff's department. I'm going to hand you now what's been Well, we might as well get these two out of the way. Exhibit 197 and 199. Tell the jury what those are, please. Two pocket notebooks. Also seized from the computer desk area? I believe that would be correct. Sergeant Tyson? Attorney Buting then says, wait, slow down. Can you identify that? Attorney Kratz says, I'm sorry. And then he continues. They are two different colors. Which color is 199? The red one would be 199, the green one being 197. All right, thank you very much. I will have Investigator Wiegert hand you what's been marked as Exhibit 194. Can you tell us what that is, please? That's a for sale sign that was found by Detective Remacher in the desk that was located in the living room. Can you show us the for sale sign? Is there something written on the back? On the back, there is an address on Xander Road. And directly underneath it, once again, shows a telephone number, which Detective Remacher once again said that's Teresa Hallbach's number. Exhibit 149, which I'm showing now, is already part of the case and has been admitted into evidence. I'm now showing you what's Exhibit 177. What is that? Looks like a scene photograph taken by either Colburn or Remacher. And obviously, I think it was pulled out a little bit. So you can see what it was, but I think it was in further. I think it was just pulled out and photographed it to show that it was found there. And Exhibit 178, is that a picture of what we saw was in front of the for sale sign? Yes. And 179 would be the back. Is that right? That's correct. Once again, the phone number was Teresa Hallbach's telephone number. Is that right? Yes. Now, without going into any details at all, was it readily apparent to you what the address on Xander Road was? No. Sergeant, I am now going to hand you what's been marked for identification as Exhibit 202. Ask if you can tell us what that is, please. It's an Auto Trader magazine. Where was that found? Detective Remacher located this on top of the computer desk in the living room. Is it opened to a particular page? Yes, page 114. And does that have any significance, or does it just happen to be open to that page? I guess I'm not exactly sure what the significance is. That's fine. The exhibit number 150, this is already in evidence. Is this how that particular Auto Trader looked on the computer desk? I believe that's the scene photograph. And exhibit 180. By the way, was there more than one Auto Trader magazine on that desk? I believe there were a couple. All right. Is exhibit 180 one of those pictures? Yes. And finally, exhibit 181. We talked about some evidence photos. Is that 181? Yes, that would be an evidence photo. And I'll have Investigator Wiegert hand you exhibit number 201. Tell us what this was and where was it found, please. Number 201 is a bill of sale for Auto Trader magazine. I believe this was found by Detective Remacher, and this was also either on or in the computer desk. I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to show you exhibit number 182. Is that a photo of that bill of sale on the desk? Yes. Exhibit 151, already in evidence. Does that look like one of those evidence photos again? Yes. Sergeant Tyson, about what time of night was it that this is getting to be? In other words, when you got through the bedroom and the bathroom and through the living room, about what time were those rooms all completed? It was approaching the 10 o'clock hour at night. Investigator Wiegert is now going to hand you what's been marked as exhibit number 195 and ask you to identify that if you can. It's a bleach bottle. And have you seen that before? Looks like possibly the one that was in the bathroom up on a shelf. Whose bathroom and whose shelf? I'm sorry, Steve Avery's bathroom on a shelf. All right. We'll talk about evidence photos again, so we don't have to lug these things into the courtroom. I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 183. Tell us what that is, please. It's an evidence photo of the bleach bottle. What's Exhibit number 184? The carpet cleaner. Have you seen that before? I did. I believe this was in that spare bedroom in Steven's residence. And after being seized was a photo taken of that at the sheriff's department. Yes, that would be an evidence photo right here. 184, is that right? Yes. Just to complete the next 6 pictures, although we talked about them, these photos were a little bit out of order. We talked about some blood spots in the bathroom. I just want to show the jury some pictures of those. Tell them about Exhibit 185, please. Exhibit 185 appeared to be the linoleum floor in the bathroom, and see a dried stain on the floor right there. Was that one of those spots that was swabbed or collected from what you talked about? Yeah, I believe Detective Remacher did swab that stain. We'll hear from him later in this case, but you were present when all that processing was going on? Yes. What's Exhibit 186? 186 looks like it's a close-up of the same stain. All right, and 187? Looks like there's some stains on the, if that's the door, I'm not exactly sure. Looks like some stains on a dark-colored surface. I tell you what I'll do. I will save that for Detective Remacher. Does that sound like a good idea? Yeah. All right. And you talked about those identifiers before. I show you Exhibit 188. Tell us what that is, please. This would be the letter that was inside of the envelope that you saw, which wears the identifiers from the University of Wisconsin Law School, addressed to Steven Avery. Exhibit 189. Also, an envelope showing the address of Mr. Avery, but being 12930. Does that look like it's taken at the scene? Yes. Now, looks like somebody is wearing gloves in that scene. Maybe describe that for the jury. What's that for? All of us that were inside the residence, before you even make entry, you put gloves on your hands as to try not to leave any of your stuff behind, is what it's called. You don't want to be touching things with, your bare hands. So you wear gloves to make sure you are not tainting the scene. And finally, we have been talking about evidence photos. Exhibit number 190. What is that? This would be the envelope from the University of Wisconsin-Madison Law School addressed to Steven Avery. All right. Now, at any time during the search, at least when you entered the search sometime, about what time was it that you entered? I'm sorry? We entered his residence. It was 7:30 p.m. And from 7:30 p.m. until you left the residence, what time did you leave? We left at 10:05 p.m. Any time between 7:30 and 10:05, did either you, Detective Remacher, Lieutenant Link, or Sergeant Colburn ever leave that residence? No. At any time during the search of the residence on the 5th of November, did Lieutenant Link, Sergeant Colburn, or Detective Remacher ever take any items of property from that location? No, they may have assisted carrying the stuff out at the end of the evening to place it in Detective Remacher's squad. I was with them. So they may have assisted carrying stuff out, putting it in the back seat, but it was with me. And they did give me a ride back up to the command post, and I personally unloaded all the objects and put them in my squad car. What the record hasn't reflected and what the jury hasn't seen, each one of these evidence items were in a sealed bag. Is that right? Yes. Lieutenant Link was in charge of putting everything inside the bags. So they were secured, each individual piece. Those items were then taken out to the squad and turned over to me to be taken to the sheriff's department. All right. Sergeant Tyson, I'm going to direct your attention. This is a little bit out of order, but since it's next on my photo list, that's where I'm going. On April 3rd of 2006, were you asked to make contact with Teresa Halbach's RAV4 vehicle? Yes. Can you tell the jury the purpose of that contact, please? Sure. Investigator Wiegert and Agent Fassbender requested that Deputy Hawkins and myself go out to where Teresa's vehicle was. They wished for us to do DNA swabs of the driver's door, the passenger door. They wanted a swab done of the hood latch to the vehicle, as well as the battery cables under the hood. All right. And DNA swabs, what exactly is that? What are you talking about? Pretty much the same as swabbing for blood, only you can't see anything. You are looking for any type of DNA, be it skin cells or any kind of sweat, anything that's DNA. So, what we're doing is kind of the same procedure. We're taking distilled water, dropping it on the end of the cotton swabs, and you just swab the area to hopefully pick up DNA if it's there. Okay. We're going to hear from the analyst that is on the other side of that process. But did you, in fact, do that on the 3rd of April? Yes. We're going to have Investigator Wiegert have marked, actually, a package. I'm not going to have it opened, but we'll have the package marked. Exhibit number 205 is then marked for identification. Attorney Kratz says, "What's the number?" Investigator Wiegert says 205. And then Attorney Kratz continues. He's going to hand you exhibit number 205. Can you tell us what that is, please? Number 205 is the actual swab containing possible DNA evidence that was taken from the hood latch of Teresa Halbach's vehicle on April 3rd. Can you tell us where a hood latch is, especially on a RAV4? It's right underneath the hood itself. You pop the hood latch thing inside, and you have to undo it. Pop the hood latch thing inside. That sounds like a law enforcement term. God. I hope he's joking. Sorry. What are you talking about? You have to go inside the vehicle to release the hood latch so you can get in to manipulate the actual hood latch lever to get the hood open. I'm going to show you exhibit number 191. Tell us what we're looking at here. It looks like the front end of Teresa Halbach's vehicle. And 192 is a close-up of something. What is that? The hood latch. And using your laser pointer, can you tell the jury what you did on April 3rd with exhibit or what's depicted on exhibit 192? Sure. This area right here would be the releasing mechanism for the hood latch. So what I had done is took my swab, placed some distilled water on it, and I swabbed the front and back of this piece right here. Now, to get at that particular release lever or that latch, how do you do that? You had to go into the vehicle, pull the release. And once the hood goes up a little bit, you are able to get in there and make the hood go up. To get in where? To that area. Do you have to reach inside of something? Yes, you have to go in between the hood and the frame to release the lever and make the hood go up. Okay, Christine here. I have a question. I know nobody's going to answer it, but this is a question. So this is what, April 3rd? I think, yeah, April 3rd. This officer or this officer goes in and gets a DNA swab of this latch on the hood. But in order to make the hood, release so that you can actually lift the hood off the car, you have to reach inside the car and then pull the lever that releases the hood. So he did that whole process, right? I believe in an earlier testimony, we had this discussion about, if somebody was in the car and they were touching all of these items, I wonder if they actually did a DNA swab on the latch that releases the hood from inside the vehicle before this officer touched it. Because once he's touched it, it kind of messes things up, right? Anyway, let's continue. What time did you finish your search of Mr. Avery's trailer? On November 5th? Yes, I'm sorry. 10:05 p.m. And after 10:05 p.m., then, were you given any further responsibilities at the Avery salvage property? After I cleared, we went back to the command center. I offloaded all the evidence that was seized out of Steven's trailer, secured it into my squad car, made contact with Agent Fassbender and Investigator Wiegert, and told to transport it back to the sheriff's department and to be back at the scene the next morning for further instructions. Kind of a long day? Yes. The next day, that is Sunday, the 6th of November, Sergeant Tyson, did you return to that scene? Yes. And what were your duties on the 6th of November? On the 6th of November, I made contact with Investigator Wiegert and Agent Fassbender. My responsibilities on the 6th, I was teamed up with Detective Sergeant Brian Swetlick, Detective Jeff Tech, and Patrol Officer Rob Block from the City of Manitowoc Police Department. Our duties that day were to search a trailer that had not been searched yet. They didn't believe anybody lived in it. It was more for housing vehicle parts and things like that. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, Sergeant, but these 3 City of Manitowoc officers, did they have any specialized training that you knew? Yes. Rob Block was a patrol officer with the City of Manitowoc. He was an evidence technician, and Jeff Tech was a detective, and Brian Swetlick was also a sergeant detective. By the way, I don't think we mentioned this, but do Lieutenant Link, Sergeant Colburn, and Detective Remaker have any specialized training that you know of? Detective Remaker, I know for sure did. He had all the evidence supplies consistent with being an evidence technician. And the others will wait till they testify to their qualifications. Is that right? And then there was no verbal response. Okay. On the 6th, then, matched up with these other evidence techs, what were you asked to search on the 6th? Was the trailer that was situated between Barb Janda's residence and Steven's parents' residence. We did go into that trailer. It was relatively quick because there was nothing of evidentiary value that we could see inside the trailer. We were then requested to concentrate our efforts in the fenced-in areas of the Avery property. Check the outbuildings. There were, I think, 3 different outbuildings. Look for any possible evidence in those outbuildings. And then the final thing was to execute the search warrant in Dolores and Al Avery, their residence. Did you do anything else on the 6th? I believe it was the outbuildings and the search warrant at Stephen's mother and father's residence. And although we hear a lot of people doing a lot of things in a lot of different places, is there anything that you can note for the jury that had any substantial evidentiary value found in any of those searches? There was nothing that was found to be of evidentiary value. Attorney Buting then says, objection as to the form of the question. Is he talking about searches that he was involved in? Attorney Kratz says, yes, just him. Sorry. Attorney Buting says, okay. And then Attorney Kratz continues. And we're not going to waste any more time on the 6th. Let's move to the 7th. Ask what your responsibilities were that day. The morning of the 7th, I was paired back up again with Sergeant Colburn and Lieutenant Link. We were originally assigned, first thing was to go down to a maroon-colored van, which was parked outside of Barb Janda's residence. I was informed that that van was the van that Teresa Hallback had come onto the property to photograph. What was requested of us was to take a look inside the van to see if we could find anything of evidentiary value inside the van or outside the van. We did search the van, found nothing of evidentiary value. I did collect a belt, and that was seized as possible evidence. And so the van itself didn't provide nothing of evidentiary value. Before we leave that topic, I'm going to show you a photograph already been admitted, exhibit number 59. Tell us what we're looking at here, please. Here we have got Stephen's trailer, the garage. Here is the van that I was just talking about. And Barb Janda's residence, this would be her driveway right here. We talked about searching a van with Lieutenant Link. Does exhibit number 59 document that exact activity, or don't you know? I'm sorry, what was the question? You talked about searching this van with Lieutenant Link. Does exhibit 59 document that? Yes, this shows the van. It shows the door being open. There's me and there's Mr. Link. All right. What were your next duties on the 7th? After we were finished with that, it was my understanding, although I didn't see it, apparently the fire departments had been called out to the scene, They were going through the junkyard, I think the day before, using their equipment to pry open all the trunks on all the vehicles in the junkyard. So on the morning of the 7th, our responsibility was to find any remaining vehicles that did not have the trunk popped by the fire department. And if we located those vehicles, our responsibility was to open the trunk areas of all those vehicles. Who did you do that with? Lieutenant Link and Sergeant Colburn. Did you do all those things? Yes, we found numerous vehicles that were not taken care of, so we did use crowbars, wherever necessary, to get them trunk lids open. Did you find anything in any of those vehicles? No. By the way, the three of you didn't plant any blood while you were doing that, did you? No. All right. What else did the three of you do that day? I'm trying to think. After I think we did all the trunks, we were then requested to go through the houses and collect firearms from any of the houses that still had firearms in them. So we started, I think I was told that Steven's firearms were collected already. So we started at Barb Janda's residence, and we just started collecting all the firearms that were inside the residence. Do you know about how long that project took? There were quite a few firearms. It took a long time to document all the different firearms inside the bedroom area. In whose residences did you go to collect the firearms? We were in Barb Janda's residence pretty much the whole day. All right. Were you asked on the 7th to perform any duties with Mr. Avery's computer? Yeah, I believe it was the morning hours. Investigator Wiegert telephoned me and asked me to make entry into Steven Avery's residence. He told me that he did need the serial numbers, make and model off of the computer that was sitting on the computer desk in the living room. Sergeant Colburn, myself, and Lieutenant Link did make entry, and we were in there for all of about 3 or 4 minutes, I believe. I telephoned Investigator Wiegert with the information he needed, and we immediately left the residence. Lieutenant Link and Colburn, I'm sorry, did you say that they were both with you? I believe all three of us were together. Did they leave your location at all at that time? No. And then you left? Yes, went back to, I believe, Barb Janda's to finish with the firearms. Christine here. Why in the hell would you need two Manitowoc officers, detectives, whatever the hell they are, two Manitowoc people to go with someone from Calumet County, who are the ones who are supposed to be handling this, right, into a residence just to get serial numbers off of a computer? Isn't that interesting? Why would you need all three of them? Let's continue. I'm going to hurry just a little bit with you, Sergeant Tyson, so that we can get through at least your direct testimony for the day. Let me just move forward to the 8th of November. That would be on Tuesday. Were you on site at all that day? I didn't go out to the scene on the morning hours of the 8th. My responsibilities were at the Calumet County Sheriff's Department, taking care of all the evidence that had been collected over the course of the past 2 days. Forms had to be filled out, property tags assigned, that evidence to be secured for the evidence custodian so he could move them to his location and free up some of the lockers that I was currently taking up with all the stuff that I had downstairs. So that was a lot of my day. I did clear from there and did respond back out to, I think, the Avery property, just to see if I was needed in some other capacity. I think there were some officers that were collecting burn barrels. I know I probably assisted with picking up one or two, helping them get them on trailers and things like that, but that was the extent of my involvement on the 8th. All right. Are you familiar with something called a buccal swab? Yes. What is that? It's a swab that's taken by a medical professional, and how it's taken is it's a long cotton applicator, and it's put inside the person's cheek and rubbed back and forth, collecting skin cells, I believe, off of the inside of that person's mouth. Do you know what a buccal swab is used for? DNA identification. Do you know what an exemplar is? A DNA exemplar? Probably a known DNA substance. All right. On the Wednesday, the 9th of November, were you asked to assist medical professionals in obtaining what are called DNA exemplars or known DNA samples from Steven Avery and some other Avery family members? Yes. Did you do that on that day? Yes. Now, were you just asked, and were there search warrants just for Steven Avery's DNA, or were there others that were involved as well? There were others. In the morning of the 9th, I think Agent Fassbender and Investigator Wiegert, they told me that they needed me to go up to the Aurora Medical Clinic in Two Rivers. They explained that there were search warrants for Steven Avery, Bobby Dassey, Chuck Avery, Earl Avery, Dolores Avery, and Barb Janda. They said each would be transported to the Aurora Clinic in Two Rivers, and then my responsibility would be to photograph any injuries that they may have had and to collect all buccal swabs taken by the registered nurse. Did you do that? Yes. Regarding Steven Avery, the defendant, do you see him seated in the courtroom here today? Yes. Were you present, Sergeant Tyson, when a physical examination was performed of Steven Avery on the 9th of November? Yes. And were you able to observe any injuries, specifically any injuries to Mr. Avery's right hand? Yes. I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as exhibit number 193. Tell us what that is, please. We were measuring the cut here to his finger, right there. And that's just a close-up. Was this photo taken by you? Is that right? Yes. Who was assisting you in that process? Faye Fritsch, she would be the registered nurse at Aurora Medical Clinic, and the medical director, Dr. Laura Vogel Schwartz, was also present in the room. And I think the two investigators assigned to Mr. Avery were also present. I'm sure we'll hear from Miss Fritsch, but do you recall where this cut, that we're seeing on Exhibit 193, was located? Looks like it's his middle finger. Okay. We see it here in the photos, but was it visible to you to the naked eye? Yes. Sergeant Tyson, the next day, that is on the 10th of November, do you recall if you had any responsibilities in this investigation? On the 10th, I believe, I responded out to the Avery property. State Patrol, I think, had hundreds of State Patrol officers canvassing the quarries and the surrounding area. I was sent out when they found something down in the quarry areas just to see if I could identify what it was. And nothing of evidentiary value was found. All right. On the 12th, then, that would be Saturday, were you asked to perform one final responsibility at that location? Yeah. Sheriff Jerry Poggle instructed me to grab a camcorder and to go through every single residence on the property to show the condition of which we were leaving the property before we released the scene back to the family. Did you do that? Yes, I was with Corrections Officer Larry Schroeder at that time. Very briefly, Sergeant Tyson, we talked about the 9th of December and the execution of a search warrant where you seized a bookcase. Did you also return to the Avery property on March 1st and 2nd of 2006? Yes. Did you participate in the execution of yet another search warrant at the Avery residence, that is, his trailer? Yes. During March 1st and 2nd, who was in charge of the evidence documentation and seizure inside of Mr. Avery's trailer? We had investigator Wendy Baldwin taking notes, and patrolman Rick Reamer was an evidence technician in our department. Him and myself were doing most of the searching. She was documenting all evidence that was recovered by Deputy Reamer and taken out to the secured trailer, which was parked in the driveway. All right. My last area of inquiry, Sergeant Tyson, has to do with human remains or other kinds of materials. Were you asked to participate not only with other law enforcement officers, but with a forensic anthropologist in sifting and sorting some ashes and remains. Yes, on December 20th of 2005, I did go down to the Wisconsin Crime Lab with investigator Dietering to assist numerous Department of Correction or Department of Criminal Investigation agents there. Deputy Reamer was there, and we sorted through contents of burn barrels. And I think later in April, the following year, I think we had April 11th, I believe it was, I did assist at the Sheriff's Department, and the Wisconsin Crime Lab was at our facility. We had stations out in the garage behind our department, and we had gone through a lot of materials burnt. Sergeant Tyson, on November 5th of 2005, and in fact, that entire week that you worked specifically with Lieutenant Link and Sergeant Colburn, did you witness anything from either one of those law enforcement professionals that in any way questioned either their reliability or their ability to perform their law enforcement duties on that scene? No. Attorney Kratz says, Judge, I am going to move for the admissions of Exhibit 163 through 205, with the exceptions of Exhibit 164, 165, 187, and I think that's it. Those were the three that this officer was unable to identify. The rest, I believe he has, and would move their admission at this time. And the court says, any objection to the admission of those exhibits? Attorney Buting says no objection. The court says, all right. The exhibits listed then by Mr. Kratz will be admitted. Mr. Kratz, do you have any further questions of the witness? Attorney Kratz says no. And the court says, members of the jury, we have got a few things to take up with counsel before leaving today. So I think, given that, it's probably a little late to get into cross-examination. So at this time, I'm going to excuse you for today. So the judge excuses the jury for the day, and then has the officer Tyson tells him he's also excused. And then there are some details that they end up talking about once everybody's gone. But essentially all that this is about exhibits, what their number was or what it contained or whether it's going to be admitted, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to leave it at this for right now, and we will continue in the next episode with the cross-examination. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Here's what really sticks with me after this day of testimony. The prosecution showed the jury all of these items, like notebooks, a for sale sign, even a bleach bottle from Steven's bathroom. And each time it was presented as if these were bombshell discoveries. Oh my gosh, look what we found. But think about it. If someone went through your house, your drawers, your cupboards, what random things do you think that they could pull out and then twist into evidence? That's exactly what this feels like. And then there's Detective Remaker. He opens a notebook, he sees a phone number, and immediately says, that's Teresa's number. Not, this looks like it could be Teresa's number. Not, let me check it against what we have. But he said it as a fact. And he does it again with the for sale sign. And then, as if to seal it, the prosecutor repeats it for the jury. Once again, this was Teresa Hallback's number, correct? This doesn't feel like presenting evidence to the jury. It feels more like the prosecution is playing the jury, as if they weren't intelligent enough to see through this crazy shit. Honestly, anyone who had appointments with Teresa that day would likely have had the same items in their homes. And yes, even the bleach. So let's talk about that bleach bottle. It was found on a bathroom shelf. Oh no, how incriminating. Bleach in the bathroom? Say it isn't so. The prosecution makes it seem so evil and sinister when you put it with the notebooks, the for sale sign, and the Auto Trader magazine. I guess they're hoping that all of this stuff makes it look like some kind of real heavy evidence. But, honestly, does it really prove anything? And another issue? They had Steven's trailer under control for a week in November of 2005. Tyson said they were sure something happened in that bedroom, yet they didn't take the carpet. If they felt that there was a cleanup that happened, why not? I mean, he did mention the carpet cleaner in the spare bedroom, right? They heard another story, the jury did, in this case about someone who had used a carpet cleaner to remove stains from the carpet, but it didn't remove the stains from the padding. So if they were so damn sure, why was it still there all the way up to March of 2006? And lastly, why did Tyson need two Manitowoc officers with him just to go get a computer serial number? If Calumet was in charge, why not just send him? Why bring in Link and Colburn again, of all people, the very people the state swore were, walled off from this case? Every single time someone from Manitowoc comes back onto the crime scene, it starts to raise more and more doubts about who had access to what and when. So this one leaves me with a lot of big questions. Hopefully in the next episode, when the defense gets a crack at Tyson, we'll get the answer to some of those. And that, my friends, will be in the next episode. Until then, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now.